Compensating family members, have a clear and deliberate compensation policy. The compensation plan has to be logical, and it has to be something that makes sense. Now, unequal pay does not mean unequal love. And a lot of family business leaders have real problems when it comes to how to pay people in their family, because if one of the persons in the family business is the lead or has a specific competency that another doesn't, and that is valued more by the business, if that person were a regular employee, would you be paying more for that position? And the answer would be yes. Then you compensate that person who is in that position in the family at a higher level. And if somebody challenges that, a lot of family business leaders tend to feel guilty about that and make up for it in other ways. So they'll say, well, I'm paying your brother X, but I'm going to pay your country club membership on the side. Don't worry about it. That's a surefire way for disaster when you start meddling in the compensation system within families by having the family business leader try to shake and move, if you will, the various eggs in a row in terms of getting people to be compensated equally. People need to discuss how profits are going to be retained so that everybody has a discussion of material lifestyle and what is good for them. And there also, I think, needs to be a policy for those family members who are shareholders who are not working in a family business. A lot of families have arguments because for one reason or another, a family business member decided not to go into the business but has inherited or has shares in the business. And he, as most shareholders would like, or she would like, a dividend. So if the business can't pay a dividend, then you need to be honest and say the business can't pay a dividend. However, if that person sees the owners, siblings, cousins, relatives living high off the hog and spending a fortune with no dividends to shareholders, that could cause a problem in the business. Electing and grooming successors are very important. That's probably the single, after compensation, the single biggest issue in a business, because as my dad learned and believed over the years, one person in his mind had to be in charge of the family business. Partnerships are great. When it's 50-50, it's okay if things are getting along. But if you're in a situation like we were, and we were growing and had several hundred employees at the time, you need to be thoughtful of their futures, and you don't want to see family get into a fight over succession. So it's important to spell out those succession plans really very carefully. If you're working with spouses, very important to have a discussion about what those roles are going to be and how that's all going to work, because that is another interesting sticking point within the family business and can lead to harmonious and happy times and sometimes not so happy times, including major family wrecks. So it's important that everybody understands how that all works. And you can see that the continuing theme here is communicating openly and candidly and not keeping things hidden and away from the discussion that really needs to take place. It's not necessarily a discussion that needs to take place at the family dinner table, as I've said, but at some point in time, formal discussions are really, really important. Recruiting and retaining good non-family members are really important. I think that's a critical success for family business. You can't run a business so that everybody who isn't in the family thinks that there's no future and there's nothing in it for them. So it's really important to do that. And then, of course, transitioning ownership to family members is really, really important. What's the best time to let go? My dad decided to leave the business. Even though we had sold the company, we were running independently as a division. He was still there, and he was 61 years old, and he walked into my office at the end of a day, and he said, "I'm leaving." And I thought he was just like leaving. I'll see him tomorrow, which I did, but he meant, no, I'm leaving the company. I've decided to make you the CEO, and I'm going to take off and do some other things. I've had it. I don't really think in his heart he wanted to do that, because he went on to work in another business and become the CEO of another company, which is a longer story, which I'll tell people at the cocktail hour if they want. But he basically felt that it was the right time for me at age 37 and the right time in the business to move the business into somebody else's hands. And he did that at a relatively young age. So it's important. Senior generation family members, though, are living longer, healthier lives than previous generations, and sometimes they push retirement back. So it's important to try to figure out how best to do that. And you read about it all the time. A guy like Sumner Redstone, for example, he's like 90, and he's fighting with his kids all the time in their family business. I think his children, who were in their 60s, said, "Dad, it's time to leave." And he said, "No way," and he fired everybody. So I guess when you have control, you've got control, but it's not necessarily happening for the Redstone family. And the last and not least, for everybody here, it's learn and be willing to change with an open mind. I think that no matter what generation you're in, you could be an earlier generation, the older generation, it's important that people understand that we live in a changing world, that the dynamics of the world change. And even though what has worked in the past has often been a very successful formula for successful businesses, it doesn't mean that that is always going to be the case. In our case, for example, my dad started out in the non-food business, distributing mouthwash and toothpaste and sundries to local folks, local retailers. And over the time, I realized that that business was going to go the way of the big discounters, and we weren't going to have as much wholesale business. And I migrated more and more into the specialty food business, so which he let me do, and he backed and supported. So looking at your business strategically is really important. And I think that if everybody looks at their businesses to expect change, anticipate change, and live with it, and learn from it, I think it can be a very rewarding experience. So that's about my 10 things for successful family businesses. I suggest that you hopefully keep some of those things that I said in mind. And I think the successful guys are probably doing that now, but it's never late, or it's always a good thing to remember from time to time, sort of repeating those things that help keep you successful and solid. So multi-family, multi-generational businesses are not just lucky. They pay close attention to making continuity happen. They've earned their success. Their companies, they're being managed and by business-focused families who understand that the needs of the business do come ahead of the needs of the family. And family business continuity requires a lot of work on everyone's part, and there are often hard decisions to be made with the ultimate goal of creating and maintaining family harmony. So with that, I want to congratulate the 7 family businesses who are being honored today. I want to thank everybody for giving me their attention, and I hope I've been able to just sort of give you a little bit of insight into some of the reasons why I think family businesses who are successful are successful. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Bob. We have a lovely Worcester book for you and a gift certificate to a local restaurant. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.